Senator Rennick.
Guys, how are you going?
Very well, Senator.
So my questions are in regards to the GenCost report. Is it correct that GenCost assumes there's no extra cost for storage and transmission lines until renewables hit 60% of the grid?
I'll take that question on notice, Senator.
Have you got someone there that can answer it now?
No, as I said, our expert on GenCost, Paul Graham, and his direct superior, Peter Mayfield, are both on leave. I'm very happy to take that on notice.
So given that GenCost is sort of all the talk of the town at the moment, I'm a little bit surprised you haven't got someone here that could provide more information about that.
I'm happy to take it on notice, Senator.
Okay, well, it's going to be very difficult. So, next question. Is it correct that GenCost assumes a wind capacity of 48% for onshore wind and 52% for offshore wind?
I'm very happy to take that question on notice, Senator.
You're going to take that on notice, are you? Are you aware that the average wind capacity for the last 5 years has been 30%?
Senator, I'll take that on notice. So
okay,
I'm not
to take it on notice. I'm telling you, okay, that average wind capacity for the last 5 years is 30%, and the GenCost report does have a wind capacity for onshore of 48% and offshore wind of 52%. Now, why is it that the CSIRO is overestimating the wind capacity of wind, the capacity of wind?
I don't believe that's the case, and I'm happy to take your detailed questions on the figures and assumptions to Paul Graham, who is the lead author of the report and someone who's answered questions in quite some detail in this forum previously.
Okay, so does the GenCost report include the cost of recycling renewables?
Senator,
batteries, wind turbines, solar panels.
I'm happy to take those detailed questions on notice.
Okay, no worries. Are you aware that the Department of Energy says that nuclear has the highest capacity factor of any power source, and that they're quoting 92%? And given that you've just been talking about, I note that you did know that the capacity of nuclear was 53 to 89% in the GenCost report. Why is it that the GenCost report is actually got a much lower capacity factor for nuclear than what the US Department of Energy thinks it's capable of?
So I'll make two comments there. The first is we're not the United States, we're not Mongolia, we're not Mauritius, we're Australia. The system operates differently, and I'd also say that the range, the upper end of that range of 89% is pretty close to 92%. That's 3% difference.
But what's your average across the whole GenCost
53
report?
to 89 is the range we've given. The assumption is that the mean utilisation rate of coal-fired generation is 60%, that would be reasonable in the Australian context for nuclear, because the cycle of demand for energy in Australia is very different from those in other countries. And I think the Australian community would expect us to model Australia and not the US, where population centres are very different, or Japan, or other places.
So how is it that you assume coal has a capacity of 60%? That's only because renewables get first dibs at the grid throughout the middle of the day, though, isn't it? Coal generators have a capacity of close to 90% as well, if they're allowed to run 24 hours a day.
That's probably a question for the market operator, Senator.
That's right, but the historical capacity of coal prior to renewables was close to 90%. That's correct, isn't it?
My understanding is that those mechanisms of generating that are cheapest can bid in at low demand times of the day. And there are coal plants that can do that very well, which is why you get the 89% higher estimate. But not all coal plants can do it as cheaply, and that's why you get the range.
So in regards to the amount of storage that's needed for solar and wind, how much of the proposed say for example, solar and wind provide 30% of energy into the grid, how much storage capacity have you got for that 30%?
I'll take that question on notice, Senator.
Okay. Can you also take on notice of that required storage capacity, how much of that storage capacity is actually batteries versus pumped hydro?
I'd be delighted to take that question on notice, Senator.
Okay. And in regards to the pumped hydro capacity factor, or how much pumped hydro you're going to need to store the energy, can you actually tell me where those sites are going to be by 2030?
I'll take that on notice.
Okay. Can you tell me why you're aware that nuclear, in this questioning before with Senator O'Neill, you knew that nuclear had a capacity of 53 to 89%, but yet you don't know the capacity of the wind capacity of wind farms?
There's a whole lot of detail in the report, and I'm not across every piece of detail. There are a number that have been discussed widely in public and for which I've been asked a number of questions, and of course I'm more familiar with those. I also had the privilege of meeting the Shadow Minister and discussed the capacity factor of nuclear with him for an hour or so and other issues, and so I'm more familiar with those things that have been raised with me directly by elected representatives.
But isn't costing all about relative costs? And surely if you know the capacity of nuclear, you must know the capacity of wind farms as well?
Mr Hilton is the CEO of the CSIRO.
Exactly. You should know what's in GenCost, Senator Ayres.
He is, as he's indicated, not the subject matter expert or the team. He is answering these questions in an appropriately cautious way. That is making sure that what he's putting into the public domain are facts, and he has every right.
Any facts in his public domain. He doesn't know any.
He has every right.
He doesn't know.
He has every right under this process to take questions on notice so that the appropriate person can do it. That is, wild assertions not being made in relation to these important questions around costs and energy. Now, you have been here coming to these proceedings for quite some time. I've observed questions in detail from you.
Don't make any personal reflections.
Very enthusiastically asked about this range of questions and a range of other boutique areas in terms of the COVID vaccine and all that sort of stuff.
Chair,
I understand.
Point of order.
Understand you've got an interest.
Personal reflection.
Okay,
Understand you've got an interest in.
Point of order,
in
Chair.
the detail of these.
This is filibustering.
And
Point
Mr.
of order. These guys can't answer questions.
And answer questions appropriately, and that's what he's doing. And I won't have you trying to belittle the CEO of the CSIRO.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.